Hi there, welcome to another episode of Dave's Desk. Today we've reached the end of Genesis, the last 10 chapters and the story of Jacob and his 12 sons. I don't know if you've thought much about Jacob and his sons or about Abraham's family in general. I mean, it's all pretty messed up by modern standards. Social care definitely should have been involved. I mean, there's Abraham who takes his son up a mountain and is about to sacrifice him when he's stopped. We don't know how old Isaac was at that point. Probably, no older than 12 or 13, but perhaps younger, maybe 6 or 7. So we don't know quite how formative that experience was, but it probably was quite challenging. And then he has this quite dysfunctional relationship with his 2 sons, ends up giving one all of the blessing and all of the inheritance, and that causes them to fall out and have a massive argument. So that's Jacob and Esau have a very bad relationship. And Jacob really doesn't lessen any of the right parenting lessons. And so when he starts having children, he has 12 sons, which is a lot of kids by any standard. And I'm sure he cared for them all deeply, but he had a favourite. And Joseph was always his favourite, and he gave gifts to Joseph to mark him as his favourite. And not surprisingly, Joseph's brothers weren't particularly happy with this. And so when Joseph started bragging about dreams he was having that he claimed were from God, where all of his elder brothers would bow down to him, reasonably they were incensed by this arrogant little upstart who got to live the life of luxury and ease whilst they went out. So when one day Joseph brought stuff out to them in the fields and in the wilderness, they hatched a plan and they sold him for a handful of silver to slave trade. And all of these boasts and brags of Joseph, I'm sure they thought, well, that's done, that's dusted. And they went and they told their father the bad news that their brother had died, and they played that he'd been eaten by wild beasts, whereas actually Joseph was alive, sold into slavery, into a senior soldier's house in Egypt, where God blessed him and helped him, and he was able to do all these amazing things, grew to prominence in the household, but was accused of behaving awfully, which he hadn't done, and so was thrown into prison, where again God blessed him and he rose to a position of prominence, and God spoke to him and guided him, enabled him to understand dreams and these prophetic words that he was giving to people, to the point where Joseph was brought to Pharaoh. Fat cows eating thin cows, and fat sheaths of wheat being eaten by thin sheaths of wheat. Not an easy phrase to say several times quickly. And Joseph is brought to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh asks Joseph to interpret the dream, and Joseph's able to say, well, this is a dream, there's a famine coming, God has warned you. And so Pharaoh appoints Joseph to manage the situation. He rises to prominence to become second in the kingdom. So when his father's household is running out of food, his brothers come to him for food, and they bow down before him, fulfilling this word that God spoke to Joseph. And we have the strange sort of circular thing where if God hadn't given Joseph that prophecy, and Joseph hadn't shared that prophecy, would he have been in that position in the first place? And that idea that sometimes the speaking of a prophecy brings about the truth that the prophecy is speaking of. And Joseph's brothers don't recognize Joseph to begin with. Not surprising, it's been a long time, and they kind of have assumed the worst for him. But he recognizes them, and through a series of tests and trials, he forgives them, and he invites the whole family to move with him into Egypt, and to share all the blessings that he's had because of the fate that he received from them. And he says to him, this thing that you meant for evil, God meant for good, that even through the suffering I had to suffer, actually it's been God's plan. And because this has come about through prophecy, Joseph was able to trust in God's plan, was able to know God speaking to him and through him, so that through the suffering he experienced, God was with him. And after the suffering, he was able to look back and see, I guess with greater clarity, exactly how God was working through that time of struggle and suffering. And often we are not spoken to in the same clear way that Joseph was spoken to by God, in that same clear sense of our individual experience, what it's leading to. But the Bible does fill us with hope that through our experience of suffering, God will bring about good. It may not be a good for us, it may be a good for others, but we know that ultimately God experienced suffering himself to rescue us and to bring about that great good, that we could not just go to be with a long lost family member in a faraway country, but that we could go and be with our loving Father in his eternal glory. And so today, if you're struggling and you're finding life hard, please do be encouraged that God will use this one way or another for good, and that we will one day share these stories with him. Amen. God bless you. I hope you're having a good day, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.